The moment the billionaire said, "You're fired," the room went silent, not because the words were loud, but because they landed like a final verdict. Phones stopped buzzing. Pens froze mid-air. And in that silence, a single father with tired eyes and worn shoes did something no one expected. He smiled. Not bitterly. Not nervously. He smiled like a man who had already lost everything once and survived it. That smile is why people stayed. That smile is why no one left their seats. Because something in it promised that this wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning. The single dad's name was Daniel Brooks. He was 36, with rough hands shaped by years of honest labor and a heart permanently divided between responsibility and hope. Every morning before sunrise, Daniel packed his 8-year-old son Noah's lunch with careful precision, folding the note inside just right so it would be the first thing Noah saw. "Be brave today. I'm proud of you." Then he walked Noah to the neighbor's apartment and hurried to work, always counting minutes, always counting bills. His job at the towering glass corporation wasn't glamorous, operations assistant, 3rd floor, but it was stable. Or so he thought. The billionaire CEO, Victor Hale, was known for two things: his unmatched business success and his ruthless tests of character. Employees whispered stories in elevators, how he watched more than he spoke, how he tested loyalty in ways that felt cruel but always revealed something deeper. No one ever knew when they were being tested. Until Daniel. That morning, Daniel had arrived late for the first time in 3 years. Noah had a fever. The neighbor was unavailable. Daniel waited until the fever dropped and ran the entire way to work, heart pounding harder from guilt than exhaustion. By the time he stepped into the conference room, the meeting had already begun. Victor Hale stood at the head of the table, tall, composed, eyes sharp enough to slice through excuses. "You're late," Victor said calmly. "I'm sorry, sir," Daniel replied, voice steady but humble. "My son was sick. I take full responsibility." Victor studied him for a long moment, then closed the folder in his hands. "Pack your things. You're fired." That was it. No raised voice. No explanation. Just those 2 words. People expected Daniel to beg. To explain. To panic. Instead, Daniel nodded slowly. "Understood," he said. Then he hesitated, just for a second. "May I say one thing?" Victor raised an eyebrow. "You have 30 seconds. Daniel looked around the room, at the faces of people who barely knew him but knew his struggle in fragments, missed lunches, overtime shifts, quiet resilience. "I won't argue your decision," he said. "I only want to thank you. This job fed my son when I couldn't promise him tomorrow. If this is the end, I'll still be grateful for that." He turned to leave. Something shifted. Victor's hand lifted slightly. "Sit down," he said. Daniel froze. Victor walked slowly around the table. "You know," he began, "most people would have blamed their child, their past, their circumstances. You didn't. You accepted the consequence without surrendering your dignity." He paused. "Why?" Daniel swallowed. "Because my son is watching me, even when he's not in the room." The room was completely silent now. Victor returned to his seat. "You weren't fired," he said. "You were tested." A breath released collectively, but the story didn't end there. That was only the surface of the test. Victor ordered a full review of Daniel's work history. What they found stunned the board. Daniel had quietly covered shifts for co-workers without credit, refused bribes from suppliers, and once stayed overnight during a system failure to prevent a shutdown that would have cost millions, without ever reporting it. He had done all of this while raising a child alone, carrying grief from a wife lost years earlier, and never once asking for special treatment. Victor invited Daniel back into his office that evening. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. I grew up poor, Victor said unexpectedly. When I made my first million, I promised myself I'd never be weak again. But somewhere along the way, I forgot the cost of strength without compassion. He slid a folder across the desk. This is a promotion. Director of Operations. And a trust fund for your son's education. Daniel's hands trembled. Sir, why? Victor met his eyes. Because today, you reminded me what leadership looks like. Daniel walked home that night with a lighter step, but the real change came weeks later. He stood on a stage at a company gathering, invited to speak, not about success, but about balance. About choosing integrity when no one is watching. About being brave enough to show up late for work if it means showing up fully for your child. The billionaire watched from the back, silent again, but this time, reflective. And the reason people stayed until the very end of this story is simple, because they realized the test was never about getting fired. It was about who you choose to be when everything you rely on is taken away in a single sentence. Daniel didn't just keep his job. He changed the culture of an entire company by refusing to lose himself. Sometimes, the moment that feels like your worst ending is actually life asking you a question. And how you answer it can change everything.